Hi everyone, I'm Walnut and welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet VGC video. At long last, we will finally be using the Sylveon team, which has some pretty fun mons like Choice Band Meowscarada, Weakness Policy Gholdengo, and a supportive Roaring Moon. As always, I will first go over the team and then I'll show it off in battle. I'll be using the Sylveon team until we return to Masterball tier over the course of 2 episodes. Pokepace and rental code will be in the description below, as well as timestamps for each battle. And while you're down there, please consider leaving a like and subscribing so you don't miss out on part 2. I really appreciate the support from you guys. And without further ado, let's go over the team. The team is built around a Fire, Water, Grass, and Dragon Fairy Steel core to make a pretty balanced team that has options versus a lot of the meta's threats. Iron Bundle has a pretty standard set. This one is holding a Focus Sash since I wanted to put my booster energy on Roaring Moon. The booster energy on Roaring Moon means that I can use up my item and launch powerful Terra-flying acrobatics at my opponents. The booster energy boosts speed here, which is really nice because then I have a fast Tailwind setter, which is useful versus certain matchups since the attackers on this team aren't very fast. Breaking Swipe is the other attacking move on this set, and it helps versus physical attackers by dropping both my opponent's attack by 1 stage, while also dealing nice chip damage. Speaking of dropping attack, Arcanine has been really popular this format, and for good reason. Having Intimidate, Will-O-Wisp, and Snarl allows me to decrease my opponent's damage output. I'm also running Safety Goggles for Spore immunity, and Terra Dark to be immune to Psy Spam, though I'm considering switching to a Citrus Berry and Terra Grass set instead, since I already have Roaring Moon to be immune to the Expanding Force, and the Terra Grass would allow me to resist Water and Ground type moves, while also becoming immune to that Spore. Meowscarada has fallen off a lot since Series 1, it dominated back then as one of the fastest Pokemon in the format, but now with Iron Bundle and Flutter Mane running around, it feels a lot weaker. But I think this is just an opportunity to try out a Choice Band Protean set instead of the Overgrow Focus Sash set of Series 1. I didn't get to play Gen 6 or 7, but I always thought Protean was a really cool ability. Unfortunately, it did get nerfed in Gen 9, but I always wanted to try it out. The attacks are going to be Flower Trick and then 3 others of your choice. I think in the 3 other slots you could run Knock Off, Sucker Punch, Play Rough, U-Turn, fighting moves like Brick Break, Low Kick, possibly even Thunder Punch. I think Thunder Punch would be the funniest option. I don't think anyone would ever expect the Electric Cat, and it could catch people off guard, especially since Terra Flying is really popular right now, with Pokemon like Roaring Moon, Tyranitar, King Gambit, and Dragonite all looking to go Terra Flying. 3 moves that I picked were Sucker Punch for Flutter Mane, U-Turn for pivoting or versus in DD, and Play Rough so I could turn into a Fairy type, though I will probably be switching U-Turn and Play Rough for Thunder Punch and Brick Break. This Meowscarada could also run Life Orb, and you could replace one of the moves with Protect if you wanted, but I thought it would be funner to just smack things really hard instead. Amoonguss is probably the better option for a grass Pokemon on this team, but I don't especially like Amoonguss, it looks very sus, and I don't trust it. I'd rather use the Pokemon that I like instead, which is pretty evident in my team choices. I used Choice Specs Gholdengo a lot in Series 1, but this Gholdengo is different. This Gholdengo set is incredibly bulky and somewhat slow, but under Tailwind it's able to outspeed opponents as long as they don't have their own speed boosts. The Gholdengo being so bulky means you often have the chance to set up a nasty plot and then you can throw off powerful Make It Rains. The Weakness Policy gives you another way to boost, and it works well on this set since Gholdengo is so bulky, you can take a super effective hit most of the time, even like a Sucker Punch from Assault Vest King Gambit, Shadow Balls from Sash Flutter Mane, and in a really rare case when testing, I survived my own Arcanine's Flare Blitz to proc Weakness Policy to win the game with a +4 Gholdengo. That was absolutely not the intention with the spreads, but after the game, I checked the calc and I'm guaranteed to live a max roll Flare Blitz from my own Arcanine with 1 HP, so yeah, that was entirely planned. Lastly, we have Sylveon. This Sylveon set is also very bulky and has a Throat Spray to boost Sylveon's damage after using Hyper Voice. I'm also running Terra Blast and Terra Water to hit the many ground types and fire types running around, and to protect myself against any steel moves. The 4th move here is Quick Attack, though you could also run Calm Mind or Yawn here, but I think Quick Attack is nice since this team doesn't have much priority. I like Sylveon even though Flutter Mane exists. Sylveon has a decent amount of HP, so it won't crumble to physical attacks. Flutter Mane doesn't usually run at a different Terra type and Terra Blast, and I wanted to have more flexibility on this team by having more coverage options. Generally, when playing the team, I like to lead Roaring Moon or Iron Bundle, sometimes even both, to establish speed control. They both deal really big damage, so hopefully I'm able to pick up KOs with the lead, or get into a position where my Pokemon that are switching in will be able to outspeed my opponent or survive the attacks and then pick up the KOs. I'd say this team's weakness is in the fact that there aren't really powerful combinations on this team. There isn't like an Indeedee Armarouge or Flutter Mane Iron Moth, Dondozo Tatsugiri. These Pokemon don't interact with each other on that level. They can still play together with the speed control options, damage reduction through Intimidate, Snarl, Breaking Swipe, Will-O-Wisp, and by covering for each other's weaknesses, so I think it's fine to not have these powerful combinations. It just allows me to play a little more flexibly with my picks, and I just need to be a little more careful on how I use them. That's enough from me though, time to show off the team in battle. Our first opponent is going to be using Gothitelle, Great Tusk, Iron Bundle, Tyranitar, Talonflame, and Fluttermane. I'd say the leads I'm worried about are probably Talonflame next to a fast attacker, or Gothitelle next to something and trapping me in. Roaring Moon will allow me to get speed control versus like a Talonflame. It also threatens damage versus Fluttermane, and I can drop the attack of their physical attackers if I need to. Arcanine's Intimidate is pretty useful into Great Tusk and Tyranitar, but Arcanine is weak to their moves, and offensively Arcanine's only really good into like Fluttermane, maybe Gothitelle with Snarl, but I think I'm going to leave Arcanine at home and focus on using Breaking Swipe as a pseudo Intimidate. Iron Bundle doesn't look too shabby, as it's okay into most of their team, except for maybe that Gothitelle, Fluttermane. I'm really afraid of that Shadow tag though, so I'm going to be leading Gholdengo. That way if they have Gothitelle, I can threaten it with Shadow Ball. The opponent that Gholdengo is probably scared of is like a Life Orb or Choice Specs Fluttermane, but if they are Life Orb or Choice Specs, that means they won't outspeed my Gholdengo, so Tailwind from Roaring Moon would be able to support that. Meowscarada is really nice as it can hit really hard and is decently fast, so it can outspeed my opponents, especially if I have that Tailwind up. I can also U-turn into Gothitelle, Sucker Punch the Fluttermane, and Flower Trick their Rock and Ground types. I also want to bring Sylveon here, since the spread Hyper Voice looks pretty good into their team. Terra Water Terra Blast is also a pretty strong consideration, as it's good into the Great Tusk, Tyranitar, and Talonflame here. So my Terra focuses in this battle are probably going to be around the Roaring Moon if I need it defensively, or Sylveon for offense. My opponent's going to be leading the Tyranitar and Talonflame here, which is pretty good for me because I expect the Tyranitar to be at most 104 speed, because that's usually what the faster Tyranitars are. So that means my Gholdengo will be able to outspeed it after a Tailwind if they set their own up. My Gholdengo should be pretty safe on this first turn unless they double into it with like a Brave Bird Assurance or like a Flare Blitz Crunch, something along those lines. But I think Talonflame is just going to set up Tailwind this turn. I don't think my Make It Rain is worth it just yet because I don't think it's going to deal enough damage. So I'm going to go for a Nasty Plot this turn to make it even more threatening, though I would expect them to proc my Weakness Policy. I need to match the Tailwind with my Roaring Moon to make sure that my Gholdengo outspeeds their Tyranitar next turn though, so I have to Tailwind on that slot. But they're going to go for a Terra straight away, and it's going to be on the Tyranitar. Into a Terra Flying type, so it looks like they probably wanted to take less damage from a potential Make It Rain, but that is not what I'm going for this turn. Talonflame sets up Tailwind, we're going to match that though. And the Tailwind is a good sign, that means the Tyranitar shouldn't be able to KO me here. We do get that Nasty Plot up, so we're going to be really threatening this next turn. And Crunch doesn't do enough damage to pick up the KO, and it's going to proc our Weakness Policy, so now, on turn 2, we have a +4 Gholdengo under Tailwind on the field. The problem is, their Talonflame might be able to KO my Gholdengo, either with like Brave Bird or even Flare Blitz, so I need to protect Gholdengo this turn. I don't want to KO the Talonflame outright, because then they could bring in a fast Pokemon like Fluttermane, which would threaten my Gholdengo, so I'm going to go for a Breaking Swipe this turn to chip the Talonflame, and then put it in range of a KO the following turn. This would also weaken the hit from the Tyranitar into the Roaring Moon if they choose to go for that. Breaking Swipe does a decent amount of damage to my opponents, doesn't bring the Talonflame as low as I would have liked, but they do go for the Flare Blitz into Gholdengo, so it's a pretty good turn for me. And luckily they go for a Rock Slide as well, so it's not going to do too much damage to my Roaring Moon here. So this next turn, I'm in a pretty strong position. My Roaring Moon is going to be faster than their Talonflame, and I can pick up the KO with a Terraflying Acrobatics that should guarantee the KO. I'm unsure of my ranges on Talonflames. I'm also unsure of what set they're running because I feel like some Talonflames are a little bulkier than others, so I'll just go for a Terraflying just to be safe. Then I'll go for a Make It Rain on the Gholdengo slot, and this should deal a ton of damage to the Tyranitar if it hits, but they're going to be switching it out. Into the Flutter Mane, so we're going to be able to take out the Flutter Mane for free here essentially. Even if it had Sash, it would faint to the Sandstorm at the end of the turn, so I'm not worried about it. I went for the Terraflying here as it would help me offensively into the Talonflame to ensure the KO. It also didn't look too bad into the rest of their Pokemon. It'd be powerful into the Flutter Mane, be fine against the Great Tusk as well. So I thought it'd be more useful to go for the Terraflying here instead of saving it for that Sylveon in the back. Make It Rain also picks up the KO on Flutter Mane, which is really nice. Now it's going to be a 4v2, and we still have Tailwind and +3 on our Gholdengo. My opponent's going to be sending in the Great Tusk as their last Pokemon, and then bringing back the Tyranitar. So the Great Tusk is a little bit of a problem, since under Tailwind it will be able to outspeed my Gholdengo and pick up the KO. Additionally, if it's Sash, I won't be able to KO it with my Roaring Moon before it attacks, but there's only one turn of Tailwind left, and my Tailwind setter is really fast, so I can just go for a Double Protect this turn, play patiently, and I can guarantee the win from here if I go for that. After the Tailwind, my Gholdengo should outspeed both my opponents. I don't think they have any moves that can take advantage of this passive play here. My opponent's just going to go for an Earthquake with the Great Tusk. And then go for a Rock Slide on the Tyranitar. So this turn I can go for the Tailwind and Make It Rain now. At +3 this should deal a ton of damage to the Tyranitar, even if it has that Assault Vest, and after the chip from the Breaking Swipe and the Sand, I should be able to pick it up. I expect the Great Tusk to go down to Sash after my Make It Rain, but I do have that Sylveon and Meowscarada in the back with priority moves. We're going to protect the Great Tusk this turn though. I'm going to set up my Tailwind, and then Gholdengo's going to Make It Rain. We actually get a critical hit on the Tyranitar, but I don't think it mattered because I'm pretty sure it goes down at this range. And with Great Tusk versus my 4 Pokemon under Tailwind, there's not really a chance for my opponent here, so they should just forfeit. I think I played this battle pretty well versus my opponent, and there isn't much that I would change. However, on the turn that I went for a Breaking Swipe onto the Talonflame, I could have also went for a Terraflying on that turn, just to be safe from a potential low kick from Tyranitar. -1 Rock Slide wouldn't KO my Roaring Moon from nearly full anyways, so it seemed like a pretty safe play. My first opponent is running Pawmot, Roaring Moon, Sylveon, Tatsugiri, Ceruledge, and Dondozo. When testing, I felt like my team had a lot of options for Dondozo Tatsugiri, whether that be Roaring Moon's Breaking Swipe, Arcanine's Intimidate, Iron Bundle's Freeze Dry does a lot of damage into it as well, and Meowscarada can crit pass the boost with Flower Trick. Not only that, but I felt like a lot of Dondozo teams would bring it to the matchup, so I do expect my opponent to bring it as well. My own Roaring Moon looks pretty good here, as it gives me some speed control if they lead something like their own Roaring Moon or a Choice Scarf Tatsugiri. Acrobatics can deal pretty nice damage into Sylveon, and like I said, that Breaking Swipe is nice to reduce their physical attack. I also want to bring Iron Bundle, as Freeze Dry looks really strong into their team. like the Tatsugiri, Dondozo, and Roaring Moon, and Hydro Pump can blast that Scarlet. Sylveon threatens fairy damage versus their Roaring Moon, Palma, and Tatsugiri. The Terra Water could be useful versus Scarlet as well, and it's more accurate than Hydro Pump, let's be honest. I thought Meowscarada would be a good pick since I can Flower Trick for crazy damage and Sucker Punch that Scarlet. I didn't want to bring Arcanine just because of like the potential Scarlet matchup. Like Arcanine doesn't really do much into that, though it would have been pretty useful into like a Dondozo for the Intimidate. I also already had Roaring Moon and Iron Bundle, so I didn't think I needed Arcanine as well. I didn't bring Gholdengo because I can't boost in front of a Roaring Moon, and I don't really have the best matchup with Gholdengo into their team. My opponent's going to be leading the Sylveon and Tatsugiri though. And I'm going to assume this Tatsugiri is going to be running the Choice Scarf because they do have a Palma on their team, and Palmas will usually have a Focus Sash. We do use our Booster Energy Speed, so we actually outspeed Tatsugiri now. So I can go for like a Tailwind and a Freeze Dry, and I'll be able to outspeed the opponent's Tatsugiri, and hopefully pick up a one-hit KO. I'm also going to go for a Terra Flying here, just so I don't faint to a Sylveon's Hyper Voice, because that seems like a really safe play for them to go for here. And since I'm expecting the Tatsugiri to be Choice Scarf, that means they won't be able to like protect or anything this play, so I'll be getting some guaranteed value into that Tatsugiri. Maybe if they switched into Scarlet, the Freeze Dry wouldn't be that great, but you know, I'd still have a Tailwind up and a Iron Bundle ready to blast it. Luckily, it looks like no switches are coming in, so if I'm right about that Tatsugiri, we should be able to pick up a KO. And Freeze Dry is able to KO the Tatsugiri, so we don't have to worry about the Dondozo getting set up this battle. They are going to go for the Hyper Voice though, deal a ton of damage to both my team members. Another Hyper Voice will definitely KO the Iron Bundle. And they're going to send in Dondozo next. I'm not too scared of the Dondozo now that the Tatsugiri is gone. I think Iron Bundle is still going to be quite valuable this battle. If they have something like that Scarlet or Roaring Moon in the back, I can go for a Freeze Dry or Hydro Pump. I'm going to go for an Acrobatics into Sylveon this turn because I don't think I'll be able to KO Sylveon, and I want to protect my Iron Bundle. I could have went for a Freeze Dry into the Dondozo, but I could have seen a Protect on their side as well. When protecting this turn, I was also a little bit afraid of the quick attack, but after clicking protect, I just realized, you know, Sylveon has really low attack. I have enough HP on Iron Bundle, and I have decent defense anyways, that I should have survived a quick attack, like, no matter what. So I think I would have been fine to just go for an attack this turn instead. The opponent is going to go for a Wave Crash here, and actually one-shot my Roaring Moon, and I was a little bit surprised at first, but I mean, I did go for a Terra Flying, so I don't resist the water moves anymore, and Roaring Moon's defense isn't the most amazing. So I went for a defensive play here, and it went pretty punished. I lost a Roaring Moon for it, though I did get some damage into that Sylveon. I'm going to bring in the Meowscarada next. I want to be able to threaten that Dondozo, though I think I'll have to go for the KO onto Sylveon instead, just because of the range of HP it's at. I don't think a Freeze Dry can pick up the KO here, because Sylveon does have pretty good special defense. The Freeze Dry into Dondozo would also cover for like a Dragon Terra, if they went for that this turn. And my opponent does go for a Terra. but it's going to be the Terra Steel on Dondozo, which is very bad for me because it's at this point where I realize I don't have any way to hit this thing very powerfully. They actually go for a quick attack into Meowscarada as well, deal a little more damage than if they went for a quick attack into Iron Bundle. Freeze Dry does a little bit of damage. Flower Trick will pick up the KO on Sylveon. But they're going to deal pretty good damage into Meowscarada with that order up. Not as much as I thought they would do after that wave crash into the Roaring Moon, but luckily we still have some HP left. And they're going to bring in the Roaring Moon as their last Pokemon, and unfortunately it is booster speed. We do still have one turn of Tailwind left, so I'm just going to go for an attack here. I'm going to try to ignore the Roaring Moon since I think it'll just faint to the Sylveon, and I do need damage into that Dondozo. I'm going to go for a Flower Trick into the Dondozo, and with the Iron Bundle slot, I wasn't exactly sure what to go for. I went for an Icy Wind though, because I wanted to make sure that my Sylveon would be able to outspeed the Dondozo after Tailwind ended, because I don't think I'd be picking up the KO this turn. They protect the Roaring Moon this turn, but it doesn't matter too much. We're able to drop the speed on Dondozo. Can deal a little bit more with that Flower Trick. They go for an Earthquake here though. And Earthquake should definitely pick up my Iron Bundle, but it doesn't KO the Meowscarada, which is nice. So this turn, I could have potentially just went for a Protect on the Iron Bundle instead, and then that way I'd still have Meowscarada and Iron Bundle this turn. Luckily my opponent did go for a Protect on the Roaring Moon because I did not attack that slot. And now that I have Sylveon and Meowscarada out, I think I'll just have to go for a Hyper Voice here, and Hyper Voice is probably a 2-hit KO on Dondozo. I think they have to focus on the Meowscarada with the Roaring Moon though, or else I'll pick up the KO on Dondozo with my Meowscarada instead. I do go for the Acrobatics into Meowscarada. Hyper Voice does pick up the Roaring Moon, which is really nice, leaves Dondozo on a sliver, but Dondozo shouldn't be able to one-hit KO me here, unless it gets a big crit. We do also activate that Throat Spray, but it doesn't matter because Dondozo does have Unaware, but they're going to go for Rest, and it's at this point where I realize the game is definitely over. I should have realized that the Dondozo wasn't healing up each turn with leftovers, which would have suggested a Chesto Resto set. In that case, I could have went for a Terra Blast in a Dondozo this turn and dealt slightly more damage, and hopefully pick up the KO, and then I could KO the Roaring Moon the following turn, since the Roaring Moon shouldn't be able to KO me with just one Acrobatics, as seen by our attempt to KO their Sylveon earlier in the battle. So if I protected on the turn where I didn't know what to do with my bundle, maybe I could have gone a little bit extra damage into the Dondozo and picked up the KO, but then again I don't know if I outspeed the Dondozo with my Sylveon. Yeah, their Wave Crash is going to take us out, and we're going to lose the battle here. I really underestimated the Dondozo after I took out the Tatsugiri, which I definitely shouldn't have because this Terra Steel Dondozo wrecked my team, so we'll play to our opponent. We had that really nice start, but should have really been more scared of the Dondozo or taken it out a little bit earlier. Even that one turn where I protected in front of the Sylveon, I could have just went for a Freeze Dry and this whole situation would have been avoided. But as I say, hindsight is 20/20. It's a lot easier for me to talk about what I should have done when I already know what my opponent has done. My next opponent is bringing Armarouge, Roaring Moon, Indeedee, Torkoal, Fluttermane, and Garchomp. The things on my opponent's team that catch my eye are going to be that Indeedee Armarouge and the Torkoal, Fluttermane, and Roaring Moon. The Indeedee Armarouge look like your usual side spam Trick Room, emphasis on Trick Room, especially with that Torkoal. But it also looks like my opponent has another mode with the Roaring Moon and Fluttermane getting Photosynthesis boosts from that Torkoal setting up the sun. I like Arcanine in the lead as it can do well into Side Spam with Snarl and Terra Dark. If they lead Sun plus a Photosynthesis Mon, I'd be getting a boost to my fire type moves, and I can also intimidate their dragons like Roaring Moon and Garchomp. Iron Bundle looks nice as well for ice moves into their dragons. Hydro Pump would still do a lot of damage into their fire types even if the sun was up, and versus Flutter Mane I could slow it down with Icy Wind and let the Arcanine take it out with Flare Blitz. The Sash on the Iron Bundle also might be useful if I want to survive an Expanding Force. In the back I'm going to have Roaring Moon because it's Dark type and it's immune to Side Spam. Breaking Swipe is nice into their Roaring Moon and Garchomp, and the Dragon typing means I can resist Eruptions. Meowscarada and Gholdengo don't look that great here. They have fire types and psychic terrain, and Gholdengo can't really hit anything besides the Flutter Mane. So in the last slot I'm going to bring Sylveon. Terra Water and Terra Blast could be useful, and fairy damage looks pretty good into their dragons. My opponent is going to be leading Torkoal and Indeedee versus my Iron Bundle and Arcanine. I expect them to go for a Trick Room or a Follow Me on their Indeedee, so I'm going to go for a Hydro Pump on Torkoal. That way if they go for the Trick Room, Torkoal should be taking a big hit unless it protects, and if they go for the Follow Me, well, my Arcanine is going to be going for a Snarl, so I will at least be able to drop the Torkoal special attack by one stage, as long as it's not going for a Protect, but why would you ever Protect and Follow Me? I also could have went for a Flare Blitz and Freeze Dry into the Indeedee and hoped that with the Sun Boost I can pick up the KO, but I believe it's a really bad roll assuming that it's a bulky Indeedee, and with that Psychic Seed I don't think I'd be dealing enough damage to pick up the KO. We do land a Hydro Pump into Torkoal, deal a good amount of damage. Unfortunately we miss Snarl on Indeedee, or at least we drop the Torkoal special attack by a stage. Indeedee is actually not going to go for a Trick Room though, and instead go for a Psychic. And at low HP and at -1, that Eruption is doing very little. I was a little bit surprised that they didn't go for a Trick Room or a Follow Me this turn and instead went for a double attack, but it's a very good turn for me because now that the Torkoal is low, it's not going to be doing huge damage with that Eruption. I'm going to ignore the Torkoal this turn and instead just go for a Flare Blitz into the Indeedee. I don't think the Iron Bundle is too useful in this position now, so I'm going to go for a switch. I could have went for a Protect as well, see what the opponent goes for, but I wanted to keep the pressure up and bring in someone fresh. I'm going to bring Sylveon first. I don't want to reveal the Roaring Moon to my opponent just yet, because I do think they'll have the Armarouge in the back, and I want to just keep my Expanding Force immunity a secret. Flare Blitz from Arcanine actually picks up the KO on Indeedee. I didn't really expect that, but I was assuming like max HP, max defense investment, so maybe this Indeedee was just not as bulky as the other ones. Flamethrower is gonna hit Sylveon, deal a good chunk of damage, about 52, and then also get the burn. So good thing I didn't switch to Roaring Moon or he might have to eat a burn. But also this way, if they send in the Armarouge, I think it's more likely that they'll go for the Expanding Force, which makes it a little bit easier to play around, because I can just predict exactly what they go in for. And they are going to send in the Armarouge for the Indeedee. This turn I was looking to go for a Terra, but I wasn't sure which slot to give it to. Terra Dark on Arcanine lets me become immune to the Expanding Force, while Terra Water could be useful offensively into the Armarouge, and it also allows me to resist fire moves. I don't think the Terra on Arcanine would allow me to KO the Torkoal, though Hyper Voice and Snarl would be able to. However, I don't think I actually want to take out the Torkoal as that would give him a free switch, so I'm just going to go for a Snarl with Arcanine and a Terra Blast with the Sylveon into the Armarouge. I'm also going to go for the Terra on Sylveon, just because I like the offensive pressure and being able to resist fire moves in case they go for a Armor Cannon into my Sylveon. But they're going to go for a Terra of their own. I really need to pay more attention to like the possibility of my opponent going for Terras, because it is a Terra Grass Armarouge, so this Terra Water Terra Blast is going to do very little damage. I think considering that I didn't reveal a dark type, I probably should have just went for the Terra Dark on my Arcanine instead. Snarl would have been pretty good into the Armarouge if they didn't go for Terras. Luckily we do hit both these guys, so this Expanding Force will do a little bit less. It looks like it's just enough for us to live. Terra Blast will go into the Armarouge slot, but with that Grass typing and the Sun Up, it's going to do peanuts. Flamethrower into Sylveon. At least the Water Terra was useful for something, as that means we will get to live the turn, because the Flamethrower does a little bit less to us. I think possibly after like a Flamethrower plus that burn, maybe we would have fainted. I'm going to go for a Snarl again with the Arcanine, and I'm going to switch the Sylveon into Roaring Moon. I'm expecting them to go for Expanding Force again, but the Roaring Moon is looking really strong here. It's going to be immune to the Expanding Force, it'll resist the Fire type move that Torkoal goes for, and it can threaten the Terra Grass with an Acrobatics. I really didn't want to stay in with the Sylveon because I didn't want to faint to something like Expanding Force. Arcanine lands yet another Snarl. This Torkoal is going to do very little damage now. Expanding Force is going to do nothing to Roaring Moon, but will pick up the KO on Arcanine. And Flamethrower is actually going to do a ton to the Roaring Moon here, because it lands a crit, so ignores all those Snarls we went for. But that's okay. We're going to be able to send in the Sylveon again and guarantee a double KO. We can pin the Armarouge slot with an Acrobatics, and then we can outspeed the Torkoal slot and just go for a Hyper Voice. I could have also just thrown a Terra Blast into that slot, but considering the Pokemon they have in the back, I think Hyper Voice is more worth it. If they do switch in like a Dragon this turn, it would do a ton of damage. The sun also hasn't faded, so I actually still have my booster energy, so this Acrobatics is not doing full damage. I could have protected this turn to stall out the sun, activate that booster energy, but I don't think I need to with this Armarouge being at half health, and a double protect could give them the opportunity to maybe switch in like a Roaring Moon of their own, switch out that Torkoal, reset the sun, something like that, which would be pretty annoying for me, and maybe give them a chance to come back into the game. Luckily, the Acrobatics is enough to pick up the Armarouge now that it's a Grass type. And even though this Hyper Voice is resisted, it should still pick up the Torkoal. And now it's going to be 3v1 versus my opponent's last Pokemon, and I should have the faster Pokemon in this matchup. The sunlight's going to go away, but we still have our booster energy, so we're still going to be faster. My opponent's going to send in Fluttermane as their last Pokemon, but I have Quick Attack on Sylveon, I have Acrobatics on Roaring Moon, and then I have the Iron Bundle as well, so I feel pretty safe just going for 100% accurate moves, and I should win the game. If my opponent went for a Protect Trick Room on turn 1, I could have been in a pretty bad spot, as he'd be able to throw off full power eruptions after that, which could be scary. My play doesn't really stop the Trick Room from going up, but it looks like my opponent was too scared of a taunt from my Iron Bundle, so my unintentional bluff worked out. I was planning on just using Sash, Protect, and switching to stall out the Trick Room, and that Snarl would be very useful as well to reduce the amount of damage they'd be able to deal during that time. I think on the turn that I went for a Terra on Sylveon was not very good. I should have just went for the Terra on Arcanine instead and switched Sylveon for Roaring Moon. The Expanding Force play was just very obvious there, and I think this play would put me at an overwhelming advantage. Also considering that the Terra Grass on Armorage, Roaring Moon looks even stronger against it. The Terra Dark on Arcanine would mean I am weak to the Flutter Mane, but I still have Roaring Moon and Iron Bundle to either Tailwind or Icy Wind for my Arcanine to outspeed the Flutter Mane and probably KO it with a Flare Blitz. This battle ended up being kinda close, but we will win with just 13 HP left on my Iron Bundle, so GG's to our opponent. Our final opponent of the day is going to be using Flutter Mane, Iron Bundle, Annihilate, Arcanine, Maushold, and Great Tusk. Maushold and Annihilate always scare me because I feel like if I make one mistake, they're just going to start punching holes through my team. I want to lead something that's strong enough and fast enough to be able to KO the Maushold before it can set up stacks on that Annihilate. My options for that are going to be Roaring Moon, Iron Bundle, and Meowscarada, as long as the Maushold isn't max speed. I'm going to be going with Roaring Moon and Iron Bundle, since Roaring Moon with Tailwind could be useful for my slower Pokemon in the back, and Breaking Swipe is good into their other physical attackers. Iron Bundle munches up pretty well into everything except for opposing Iron Bundle kind of, and Flutter Mane. Meowscarada is especially weak into the Arcanine, though if I had Brick Break on Meowscarada, I would feel a lot more comfortable going into that Maushold matchup. Arcanine is a bit of a risk because it could trigger Annihilape's Defiant, and it's not uncommon for Annihilape to go for a Terra Fire to avoid burns. It's also not that great into Iron Bundle or Great Tusk, though the Intimidate might be useful, but then again the Intimidate is why I didn't want to bring it, so yeah, no Arcanine here. I brought Gholdengo in the back, but I think that pick is very questionable. Headlong Rush, a stacked Rage Fist, Life Orb or Specs Shadow Ball, and Flare Blitz with enough attack investment all have the potential to just one-shot my Gholdengo, which makes it a bit risky. So Sylveon's going to be my last pick, as Hyper Voice is going to be pretty good into their team, and Terra Water might be a useful plan B if my Hydro Pump decides to miss. My opponent's going to be leading the Iron Bundle and the Arcanine versus my Roaring Moon and Iron Bundle, and a small movie's about to play as all our abilities proc, but the end result is their Iron Bundle is going to be the fastest, followed by my Roaring Moon, then my Iron Bundle, and then their Arcanine. And one thing about me is I really love going for those fast KOs, like that Tailwind Freeze Dry onto the Tatsugiri earlier. I'm going to go for a Tailwind Hydro Pump this turn, because after that Intimidate, I feel like my Roaring Moon isn't that threatening. I don't think I could pick up the KO with an Acrobatics and Freeze Dry to KO like the Iron Bundle. So I could also consider going for a Breaking Swipe into the Arcanine, but why would I just lower its attack when I can pick up the KO with Hydro Pump? And not only that, but if I set up the Tailwind, it could be valuable, as I like to outspeed any of the Pokemon they have in the back and allow my Pokemon that I have in the back to outspeed their team. Their Iron Bundle isn't that amazing against my Pokemon in the back, but removing their Arcanine makes my Gholdengo a lot safer. This play does go a bit poorly if I miss or if they go for a defensive Terra, but I don't think they'll expect anything like that on turn 1. They're gonna go for an Icy Wind with their Iron Bundle, drop my speed, but I did have that booster energy anyways. So we're still pretty fast, faster than this Arcanine. And we're gonna set up the Tailwind. They didn't go for a defensive Terra or a Protect, and luckily the Hydro Pump lands. I'm going to be picking up the KO, and Roaring Moon will not be taking any Will-O-Wisps, our team won't be taking any Snarls. Pretty good turn 1 for us. My opponent's sensing Great Tusk after that, and I'm glad that I went for the Tailwind play because this is one of the guys I wanted to make sure I was faster than with the Iron Bundle. But now I'm just going to focus on their Iron Bundle instead, because I think it's going to be really annoying because it's so fast. The Great Tusk gets outsped by my Pokemon in the back, so I'm not too worried about it right now. I'm going to go for a Breaking Swipe just in case they don't protect on the Great Tusk, so I can drop its attack, and it'll also get some chip into the Iron Bundle, and then I'll go for a Freeze Dry on the bundle. Hopefully get enough damage to pick up a KO, but I don't think so. They're gonna go for a Protect on their Great Tusk this turn, so our Breaking Swipe won't be affecting it, and we won't be picking up the KO on Iron Bundle most likely, because we have that -1 attack from Intimidate. They're gonna go for a Freeze Dry into our Roaring Moon, and it's actually gonna pick up the KO, even though Roaring Moon has pretty good special defense. But it is a super effective move, and Iron Bundle has a lot of special attack. But now I can send in Sylveon here. Sylveon's special damage is going to be threatening into both their Pokemon. I don't feel like bringing in Gholdengo just yet, especially with that Great Tusk being so threatening. Sylveon's Hyper Voice looks pretty great here, but I am slightly scared of an Icy Wind and like a headlong rush into my Sylveon. Icy Wind would make Sylveon slower than the Great Tusk, which would put me at risk of taking a headlong rush, so I'm going to go for my own Icy Wind on Iron Bundle to slow them down, match the speed drops. I could have also protected Sylveon in Icy Wind to be a little bit safer, but the chance of missing is only 5%. It turns out though that the Great Tusk wouldn't be able to KO the Sylveon with a headlong rush after the Icy Wind unless it was Life Orb, so I think the actual best play is to go for a Freeze Dry and Hyper Voice into the Great Tusk slot, since Freeze Dry should OHKO the Great Tusk, and if it's Life Orb it won't be able to survive. But they're actually going to switch the Iron Bundle for Mouse Hold here. And then go for a Terra on the Great Tusk. And it's a Terra Ground, so luckily we will still be doing super effective damage with the Icy Wind. And it also doesn't miss, which is really nice. It does a lot less than I expect, and I guess that's because of the Mouse Hold's Friend Guard. But it does so little that they're actually able to survive with the Great Tusk. So that's a very great play by my opponent to get a big attack off with this close combat. Must have been very calculated to live this Icy Wind plus Hyper Voice with the Friend Guard plus Terra, but you know, great on them. But I still outspeed both their Pokemon with my Sylveon and Tailwind, and outside of Tailwind, they're at -1, so I'm still in a very powerful position here. It was a pretty clutch turn by them, but I think I'm still in the lead. It's my last turn at Tailwind. I expect them to just go for a double protect. I'm gonna go for a Hyper Voice and make it rain with Gholdengo. Since they're double protecting, I guess I could have went for a nasty plot, but their Iron Bundle in the back only has like 1 HP anyways, so there's not really a point. So I thought I'd just end it a little faster. Click the Make It Rain button. And they will go for a double protect. But next turn my play doesn't really change. I should still outspeed them since they're at -1 speed with my Gholdengo. And then their Iron Bundle in the back won't be able to do anything against my Sylveon and Gholdengo. I think my first turn play was a little bit risky if their Arcanine decided to go for a Protect or a Terra. Protect isn't that likely since they're probably going to go for a Will-O-Wisp that turn, and going for a Terra on the Arcanine doesn't seem that valuable. I also don't think the Arcanine getting KO'd on turn 1 put them out of the game completely, as they still have Great Tusk in the back to deal with Gholdengo, and the Intimidate really isn't that useful into the rest of my Mons. Landing the Will-O-Wisp might be useful, but I didn't really attack too much with the Roaring Moon anyways. I think their Terra with the Great Tusk was pretty clutch, but I think that bringing the Great Tusk in general wasn't the best for this matchup, and I think a Terra Annihilate would have been a lot scarier. A better turn 1 for me might look like a Terra Flying on my Roaring Moon, and then Acro Freeze Dry into their bundle, since that attack can't miss, and with the Terra I should be able to pick up the KO. The following turn I should still outspeed most of my opponent's Pokemon, and survive a hit from most of them as well, so I could set up Tailwind on turn 2 instead. And then if I need to on turn 2 I can also protect the bundle. but luckily our turn 1 did work out in our favor. GG's to our opponent. That's going to be the last battle for this episode. We're going to end the first part of our Return to Masterball 3-in-1. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I would also appreciate it if you would consider leaving a like and subscribing as well. I'm looking to post part 2 soon, and after that I think I'm going to try out different team archetypes that I'm not used to. The biggest one for me is going to be Trick Room because I never use Trick Room, and playing it should allow me to better understand it in the matchup against it. I would also like to try Iron Hands, Dondozo to figure out how they've changed since Series 1, and maybe Mousehold because it is really cute. But until next time, bye bye!